bit.
Recording in progress.
And some of you can taste that in the some of you can already taste the apple crumble in the back of your mouth already. Um, and obviously you're not eating apple crumble, but just my words coming through a computer screen to you, some of you are beginning to have the sensations in your mouth. Not everyone does that, but a lot of people. But there is a surprisingly high amount. You start talking about food in a graphic way, and people can start beginning to taste it. Um, yeah, images, words, these things are powerful. Um, and as a performer, as a poet, you have this superpower. Even if you're just starting writing just now, you've already got the superpower. You just don't even realize it. You're like the early scenes of a superpower of a superhero movie when the hero is trying out their powers for the first time. Spider-Man jumping off a building for the first time, or whatever. So you're all superheroes basically with the superpower, but it's your choice whether you use it for good or if you use it for evil. But you all seem like you've turned up here, and you all seem, from what I hear, you're very positive people. So I'm sure you're going to be making the world better rather than worse. So right, so I've told you, I've told you about that. My way into poetry was through rap, right? And rap is, firstly, a musical art form, really, and it's something to be spoken. It's something to be performed out loud. There's only a very few raps that work really well when you write them down. There's only a few. Sometimes rap, because rap it's to sound catchy. It's to sound direct. And when you put your headphones on and you listen to whoever, someone rapping Stormzy or someone big American rapper like Kendrick Lamar or Dave from London, you're literally having someone just talk to you in your ears. Or you're just literally having someone talk to you like it's ASMR or something like that, and they are feeding you information into your ears. So rap is essentially, spoken poetry, and it's very musical in terms of how it works. Rhyme is very important. Tonality is really important. How you say the rap is very important. It has to sound exciting to the ears or cool in some way. So that was my way into poetry, actually. And it's funny because as I learned about more traditional types of English poetry, I found that actually some of the great poets back in the day, they didn't write just to be published. They wrote knowing full well that they were going to read their poems out loud, or people would be, because they didn't have streaming services. So for entertainment, they'd open up. You might go to someone's house, and then rather than say, "Oh, let's watch something on Netflix," or "Let's watch Mandalorian on Disney Plus," they'd be like, "You know what? I've got a poem here. Let's read it out, and we'll all listen." Oh, here's my favourite poet. I'm going to read a bit of William Blake. Right, we'll all read it out, and then that will be our entertainment, which is amazing. So a lot of poets knew that, and they wrote to be read out loud, to be performed. William Blake is a good example, actually. Like, although he was never famous in his lifetime, he would speak his poems out. His most famous poems are in a collection called Songs of Innocence and Experience. And literally, he would sing his poems or recite his poems out loud around his house. Sometimes butt naked, apparently, which is a bit weird. But there we go. How rude. At least wear a nappy. Come on, William Blake. What are you doing? So anyway, so there's a tradition in this country of reading poetry out loud going back, hundreds of years. And who you are and how you speak is really important. You lot are in Scotland, so you know about Robbie Burns and like how important how you speak out loud is to how it appears on a page, and speaking those poems out loud and how powerful that is, not just for the poet, but sometimes for whole countries and stuff. Iconic poets to get behind and to speak to the future, speak to the people. Right. So that's my little spiel about where I've come from as a poet, and why I think speaking poems out loud is so important. You can lift up a whole people. You can encourage people who are being bullied. You can help a friend with a poem. You can make people start thinking about recycling more, or about telling the government to stop their carbon emissions. Like poems can trigger things and push people in directions. So so go and make the world better. Right. So I'm going to give you. But how do we do that? And if you remember my apple crumble story or analogy, is that when you're performing live, if you just got up and said, "Hi everyone, please do some more recycling and write a letter to your MP and get a petition together to say more electric cars, please. Thanks, bye." It's pretty good. It's pretty good, useful, positive. But what poetry does, and why really we have poetry, is because it invites people into your experience. It's an experiential thing. It's not just information like scientific data which has been sent out or just instructions. What I love about when I listen to a good poet is that it makes me go into someone else's shoes for a second. It makes me feel how they felt. Here's a quick example. Can you see the difference between this? I got a text message the other day. My girlfriend dumped me. I was really sad. You might go, "Oh." But there's a difference between saying that, and saying, "I was stood in the rain at a bus stop. The phone vibrated. Text message. It's over. And beneath my feet, a black hole opened up and I was swallowed inside." See, one is just like the information, and the other one is using poetry, a heightened form of language, like an extreme form of language, to make you feel how I felt in that moment. And for a split second, you might go, "Ooh, I really felt the weight, the heaviness of that precise moment." And if we can get people to feel how you feel, we connect to each other more. If you can connect, like for example, we're talking about climate change. Well, why is climate change important? Why? Because it actually affects nature, it affects our lives. So maybe if you want to talk about climate change, you might write from a perspective of a tree. What is it like? What's it like to be a tree? People go, "Ooh," instead of just knowing the information, they can feel the information and why it's important. Or why there are bushfires in Australia and people's lives can be at risk. You can say a poem from the perspective of someone in a bushfire in Australia, so you realise, okay, this climate thing isn't just about cars and blah blah blah. It actually affects a real life, and I can feel what it's like to be that person who's getting the hard end of the stick, who's having the hard experience, and that kind of thing makes people go, "Oh, it's not just a concept. This is something that needs to change." And so with that, I'm going to set first example, because when you get up on stage and you perform, you want to invite people into, hopefully, an experience. It's a really effective way of working, and it's something that rappers do all the time. Rappers tell stories, which is basically giving someone a little experience, right? Your first challenge is to think of a moment which sparked an emotion in you. It could be happiness, it could be joy, it could be someone saying something, being told off, something like I get told off quite a lot. So it could be how I felt when someone got told off. Kind of think of a moment, perhaps the last moment when you felt a strong emotion. The strong emotion could be, "I'm really bored," or the strong emotion could be, "I'm watching football, it's exciting, and I'm caught up in the emotion of that moment." Try and think of a strong emotional moment, something that made you feel something, and I want you to grab a pen and paper and I want you to write it down. And it could be watching the World Cup and seeing an amazing goal. It could be getting a text message and now we've got tickets to see a film that I've always wanted to see. Or I watched the new Mario trailer that came out yesterday and I was buzzing at the end of it. It could be a really sad moment, you know. It could be a really beautiful moment, someone giving you a cuddle and saying that you're amazing. Yeah, so think of a moment. That's your first job. Okay, hopefully you've thought of some moment that has triggered an emotion in you. A triggering thing. It could be a bad trigger, it could be a good trigger. Yeah. Like if I see candy floss, that's a good trigger for me. I start to get really happy and excited. Right. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is thinking about that moment. This is a harder one. You've got to try and sum up the main feeling that you're feeling in that moment. The main feeling. Like if you've just won the lottery, you might start off with disbelief and then confusion and then happiness. Like, I've got a ticket. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh, is it really me? Confused. And then, yes, I won the lottery. I've got £1 million. Hooray! Hooray! Bubble tea for everyone. Hooray! Right? You might be thinking that. So try and pick the main feeling, which probably is joy. If you just win the lottery, it's probably like happiness or joy or excitement or something like that. So think about that moment that you came up with and try and sum it up in the feeling in one word. And I want you to stick it in the... Oh, no, don't stick it in the chat. It's a secret. Keep it secret. Yeah. But write it down on your paper. Doom, 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 doom. Give you about 30 more seconds. So that moment that you're thinking about, try and sum it up in one word. Try and sum up the emotion of the event in one word. Boredom. Anger. Terror. Ecstasy. All right, cool in the gang. Right, so now we've got a moment in time. One moment in time. And we have, that's a very old song. It's great, Whitney Houston. She doesn't sing like that though, thankfully. So now you've got a moment, something that actually probably happened to you or someone that you know. You've got a one-word feeling. Now, I want you to focus on that feeling, on that emotion. So if it's happy, sad, miserable, bored, whatever, terrified, ecstatic, just focus on that one feeling. Got it? Now I'm going to ask you questions about that word. All right? And the first question about that word is, what is the colour that that word gives off? So if it was anger, I might go, oh yeah, it's red. It's deep, dark red, yeah. Or you could say, oh no, it's actually the colour of, it's the colour of the Incredible Hulk smashing into the Empire State Building. That's the colour of it. Or if it's happiness, you could say, oh, happiness is light blue. Or you could say, the colour of happiness is 1,000 sunsets exploding in my heart. There's loads of different ways to describe the colour. You could come up with a simple thing, yellow. Or you could say, it's the colour of 1,000,000 cans of Coke being spilt on the road. Spilt on the motorway. I don't know. You decide. So that's your first thing. I'm going to type it in the chat. One colour. Okay? The next thing I'm going to ask you is perfume. So if this word, you see like perfume adverts and they're like some celebrity walking along and they look at the camera and they go, yo, this perfume is called Galaxy by Calvin Klein or something like that, don't they? But instead, you've got to imagine that your perfume is that emotion. So you'd be like, this is Misery by Testament. What does it smell like? So misery for me, I'd spray it and I go, oh, smells like cat's wee. Of course it smells like cat's wee. Yeah, of course it does. It smells like vinegar and poop all mixed together. Ugh, disgust. Oh, that's the smell of disgust. So think about the feeling and what smell would it give off? Like if it was joy, it could be like yummy fish and chips. Joy from Calvin Klein. So you've got to imagine a celebrity says that word and then sprays the spray. What smell does it give off? There we go. I'm going to give you a list of them, and then we'll come back to it, okay? So the other thing is the noise. What noise does this emotion give off? If it's happiness, is it Justin Bieber songs? Or if it's misery, is it Justin Bieber songs? If it's disgust, it could be Justin Bieber songs. So like, or is it, the sound of like a child crying or pouring of tea? Could be a bunch of things. So there's noise. Number 4 is fingers. I'll have to type that again. On your fingers. So if you could touch this word in middle of air, how would it feel between your fingers? Would you get electric shock? Is it hard like granite? Could you put your hand through it like it's a ghost or something? Like what if if it's joy, like I said before, my secret, it would feel like I'm putting my hands through candy floss. But for you, it'd be something completely different. What gives you joy? What do you associate it with? So number 5, and some of you might know what number 5 is already. You've probably realised I'm doing the senses, 5 senses. Colour is something that you see. Perfume is something you smell. Noise is something you hear. On your fingers, that's touch. Thank you very much. It's taste. So imagine you're taking a bite out of the word. Imagine the word is floating in midair and you've got to take a giant bite out of it. So your word is frustration, because that's how you felt in that moment that we went at the beginning of this webinar. In that moment. So the word is frustration. You take a bite out of frustration. Frustration probably doesn't taste like candy floss. It's probably like candy floss that has got a bee in it or some wasps hiding in it. That could be frustration. I don't know. So to recap, we've got the 5 senses. Hosts and panelists. Yeah. I should say everyone, right? Snap. Right, here we go. So, we had colour. 2 was perfume. I can't even write. I'm a writer, honestly. Perfume, then we had noise. Then after that, we had fingers. After that, we had bite. Number 6, I'm gonna take it off senses for a second. I want you to think about, how does it move? How does it move? So how does this emotion move? Happiness might skip down the street. But boredom might have to walk into town, get the number 33 bus, and then get to Perth, then go to the train station, wait for 2 hours, and then get on a train there, and then get to Edinburgh, and then to the airport. Like, that might be how boredom moves. Or it might crawl, it might creep, it might lurk. How does it move? And then number 7, the last one, is if this word was weather, if frustration or being frustrated was the weather, so imagine the weatherman's like, or weather person, weather lady, is like there next to the map of Scotland. And they're saying, oh, today over in Dumfries, we're going to have some frustration hanging over Dumfries. In Aberdeen, we're going to have a little bit of ecstasy. And right up there, right at the top, in the Orkney Isles, unfortunately, they're going to be having a bit of misery. Misery will be blowing in off the sea. So it's like, well, what would that weather look like? If anger was like weather, what would the anger be like? Because weather can be crazy. We've all seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It could, could be crazy. So, yeah, or it might be if it's calm and peaceful. Like, what's the weather? What weather does that look like? It can be as surreal as you want. So in the chat now, you should see 1, colour, 2, perfume, 3, noise, 4, fingers, that's touch. How would it feel like in your fingers? 5, bite into that emotion. Number 6, how does that emotion move around? And number 7, if it was weather. Your bonus one, which is a secret, which you've got to keep secret, is what's the antonym? Can I spell antonym? I think that's it. Which is the opposite. What's the opposite feeling? So if you're writing happy, what the opposite? You could go, it's sad. Or you could say, no, the opposite of happiness is not sadness. It's feeling alone. Loneliness is the opposite of happiness. I don't know. People have got different interpretations. So I'm going to give you, I'm only going to give you, because you've been doing it with me, I'm only going to give you like 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes tops. Just to go check through colour, perfume. You might want to add a little thing. You might want to change something. You might want to, maybe it's Cat Wee and it's Justin Bieber at the same time. Yeah, could be lots of different things. Right, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes and I shall turn off my screen and I'll be back in 2 of your Earth minutes. All right? Sorry if I scared anyone there with my face pulling. Yeah. I'm human, honestly, just about. Right. Cool. So, do you think, can anyone, I'd love for someone to read out their answers. And if you read out your answers, I do not want you to say, for number 1, I wrote pink like a flamingo. For number 2, I wrote perfume smelling like spilt chili oil. I don't want you to do that. I just want you to read the answers. So it would be, I'll say, okay, go for it, read, and then you just say, pink as a flamingo, like spilt chili oil, cats dancing to rave music, candy floss rippling through my fingers, Burger King, but I got it for free, crawling on the floor like a hurricane. Okay, so just say the answers. And your bonus, the opposite one. Have you all done the opposite one, the antonym? So what's the opposite of that emotion? That's your bonus one. Keep that one secret, okay? And don't read that out loud. It's a secret. And don't tell us what the emotion was. Just read out your answers. I want to see if people can guess what your emotion was just by your description of colour, perfume, noise, fingers, bite, move, weather. Obviously, if you give the opposite, it could be really easy to guess it. So don't. So we'll keep the bonus one. All right. Would anyone like to share theirs? Can they speak it into the microphone? Oh, you're happy. Atlas. Wicked. Brit. Atlas. Go. Can you just read out your answers, please? No numbers, just literally the answers. And don't tell us what the bonus one is, and don't tell us what the emotion is. Thank you.
The colour of lead melted down into a dull bullet. Sparks off a railroad, hot and dry. A pencil breaking in the sharpener. Ashes and nails in my hands. Too much salt crunching in your teeth. Like a glitch, stilted and stuttering. A drizzle that builds into hail, thunking on the window and bruising the path.
That was, I'm just going to steal all of that and publish it under my own name and make millions of pounds. Thanks. That was magical. I'm going to ask for in the chat, I've got my suspicions of what your word is. Can anyone, first of all, do most people think it was a more positive emotion or more negative emotion? Go in the chat. Negative. Yeah. Negative. It's like my blood type. Negative. Very good. Yeah, I pretty much got that. Would anyone like to hazard a guess of what the word was? What is the word that inspired Atlas? Yeah, frustration, anger. It felt like, like anger usually has quite a lot of energy to it. But here we had lead melted down into a dull bullet. And a bullet sounds quite angry, but it's like it's not firing a bullet. It's not a bullet that's firing. It's a bullet that's dull, and it's kind of a product of melting. So I don't know if it's got enough energy to be full on anger or rage or something like that. And even the hurricane at the end, the weather description, like it wasn't like a hurricane blowing your house into the sea, or like blowing Rishi Sunak into space. It wasn't any of that. It was like it was against a window, wasn't it? So still like. It was kind of annoying. And the pencil breaking in the sharpener. I love that one. Pencil breaking in the sharpener. So that's not probably full on rage, but it's pretty annoying. So so far we've had two offers, which are frustration and anger. Does anyone get any other thoughts? Then we'll ask Atlas to give us the antonym, which is the closest we're going to get, I think. No. All right, Atlas. What was the antonym? What's the opposite?
The opposite.
Yeah.
The opposite. The audio. I'll put it.
Cool. Putting it in the chat. Really good. So the opposite of this emotion is. Sounds like the end of Britain's Got Talent or something, isn't it? You know. The winner is. Feeling carefree or careless. Ooh. Ooh, you're far too clever. Because I would have gone with frustration. So is the opposite of frustration feeling carefree or careless? Not caring about anything. Annoyance. That's a great guess, Beatrix. Obsession. Ooh, that's quite good. Because that could be, you know, the breaking in the pencil sharpener breaking and like that feeling of like, oh, I've got to get this done or something like that. I'm writing something at the moment and I feel like, I'm not full rage, but I'm like determined, but also really frustrated at the same time, and annoyed. But that's writing for you sometimes. But then you break through it and it's all right. You get through it, and then you realise you've made something beautiful, hopefully. Okay, Atlas, can you tell us what is your word? Bitterness. That's amazing. That's amazing. What I really love was that this is basically an imagery generation exercise. That's all it is, an imagery generation exercise. However, often just that imagery, a list of imagery like we just did, 8 things or 7 and a bonus one, that can be a poem. Just that on its own. Because when Atlas was reading your words, I got all kind of feelings and emotions going through. It was like an amuse-bouche in a posh meal, or a vol-au-vent if I went to a buffet, or a one. You know, sometimes you go to a fast food restaurant and they've got a £1 menu. So you get like one nugget or something, like a couple nuggets, or a tiny burger, or a tiny little pizza bite. It was like that, loads of flavour packed up. Well, if it's good fast food, oxymoron. If it's, you know, if these little parcels of food that are full of taste and flavour and experience, and it's quite exciting. It's not a full meal necessarily, but like it gives you a really sharp taste. And from poetry, like that's you want to feel something. You don't want to be, oh, this is boring. So just in your 8 sentences, really, there, Atlas, you took us on a emotional journey. Cool. Would anyone else like to read theirs out real quick? Stick in the chat. Thank you, Atlas. You are a genius. You know this already. Sally. Yes, Sally. Thank you. Let's hear some of your goodness. And just read it out just the same way that Atlas did. Thank you.
Okay, here's mine. White is the first snow of the year, the zest of a fresh orange, the boom of a bass drum, spiky, crackling with electricity. Pop rocks. It sprints, fast as it can. A thunderstorm with the sun peeking through.
That was so gangster. That was wicked. White is the first snow. Come on, fam. This is proper. All you lot are legit. You are writers. You know, you're all writers already. You're heavyweights. Well done. Yes. So in the chat, positive or negative emotion? Come on, detectives. Sally smashed it. Yeah, positive. It is positive but intense. Because like normally when someone says spiky, you're like, ooh, is that some sort of angry emotion, spiky or annoyance or something like that? But then actually spiky, crackling with electricity. So it's like, ooh, it's more energy. It's more about energy and attitude. Neither good nor bad from Dumfries. Because it was like, I know you can be thinking that because you could be thinking, oh, the thunderstorm thing, but with sun poking through. Ooh. All right, who wants to can you guess in the chat what was the word that Sally was taking inspiration from? was going to say excitement. Yeah, Beatrix is, yeah, Bernie's smashing it right there. I'm going to say excitement. Anticipation. Yeah, like the first white snows of, like, anticipation, like you're waiting for the first, like, so almost like the night before Christmas, isn't it? That excitement. Nervousness. Ooh. Okay, Sally, tell us, what was your word? And then I'm going to ask you to do something with it. But go on.
Beatrix got it right. It was. Oh, I'll do his words. I'll put it in the chat.
Excitement.
Yeah.
Excellent work. Yeah, I thought it was excitement. That was really well drawn. Basically, you are a painter and you looked at something and thought, oh, I really want to paint that scene. And then you used your words like a paintbrush and you have successfully captured that. It was like a Caravaggio, fam. One of my favourite artists right there. It was like almost like a photo of that emotion. That's really, really good.
Okay.
Really, really strong. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like you to read. Sorry, go on. My request to you, Sally, is to read it, and then we'll put the antonym at the end. So don't say, "Oh, this is antonym." Just be like, spiky thunderstorm, and then drop, and then say the antonym. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So just read it as before and then put the antonym at the end.
Yeah, like it's a poem, and the punchline to the poem is the antonym.
Cool. White is the first snow of the year, the zest of a fresh orange, the boom of a bass drum, spiky, crackling with electricity, pop rocks. It sprints, fast as it can, a thunderstorm with the sun peeking through, boredom.
Good. That was definitely like a clash of emotions. And sometimes I love things like that because with comedy, a punchline, you set something up in one direction and it's funny because the reason the punchline is funny is because it surprises everyone at the end. Yeah. I'm going to give you a very dark joke now. It's one of my favourite dark jokes. I think it's PG, so it's all right. So here's the joke. It's a weird one. I've always liked my mother's eyes. Which reminds me, where did I put them? Very strange joke. And it gets a reaction even if it's, ooh, ah, or maybe some people just find it funny because it's like a creepy joke. It's a joke, it's not real, don't worry. So we can do that with poetry as well. We can send people in one direction and then pull the rug out from under them and surprise them with an ending. Or reveal the secret at the end. I love that. And you can do that with just imagery. You don't even have to tell people what it was. It's amazing. All right, Beatrix? Yeah, Beatrix. I'd love to hear yours. Same goes, please. Just read the whole thing, and we'll do it with the antonym as the punchline, so to speak. Go for it.
Okay. Sage green like new curtains, sandy beaches and carpet, Miley Cyrus with laughter in the background, warming suspicion fingers, stumbling through midnight air, donuts, skies ideal for cloud watching, overwhelming disappointment.
That's lovely. That's really, really lovely. Can you read it backwards now? Start at the antonym and read up to the first one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Overwhelming disappointment. Skies ideal for cloud watching. Donuts. Stumbling through midnight air. Warming frostbitten fingers. Miley Cyrus with laughter in the background. Sandy beaches and carnivals. Sage green like new curtains.
That was fire. What I loved about going around this way was it starts off with a really sad feeling, and it's almost as if you're going through all those different things, stumbling through the midnight air. eating some donuts, listening to Miley Cyrus with some friends allows you to find happiness and to find peace and find some smiles at the end of it. So it's like it takes us again on an emotional journey, but this time from sadness, kind of a negative feeling to a happy feeling. Right, you lot. What was the word? What was Beatrix's word? Innocence. Ooh. Stumbling through the midnight air. Donuts, I can remember. Miley Cyrus with laughing in the background. There is something about youth that comes through, that's true. Excited. We've only got one guess, which is innocence at the moment. Contentment. I was going to say something more like contentment. Optimism. That's a good word. I'm probably going to go for something close to contentment. Beatrix, can you tell us what your word was, please? Your emotion.
Yeah, it was contentment.
I see you with your amazing ninja-like word skills. Powerful people. What powerful people we have. 2 points to Sally, and you're through to the quarterfinals. Don't know why I said that. Which reminds me, where did I put them? Anyway, that was brilliant. So you've just generated some imagery, and to go back to the painting metaphor, when I write, especially when I'm stuck, because sometimes, you know, you get stuck, I might use this exercise as a way of generating imagery. And then you can use it as part of your palette. Or if any of you are into Lego, it's like you've just got a new box of Lego right there. So when you're constructing your masterpiece, you can go, oh yeah, I'll put a bit of that in. I'll put a bit of that in. Oh yeah, Miley Cyrus with friends laughing in the background. That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next exercise. So all these exercises, I think of them like going to the gym and pumping weights. These are things that that mean that when it comes to time when you actually want to do the thing that you need to do, if you're into karate or something, and then all of a sudden you find yourself on Cobra Kai and you need to do your kung fu, like all that training, that's when it all comes together. And that's why we do these things, is so that when your moment of inspiration hits, and actually your heart is full of like, oh, I really want to write about this. You've done all the learning and stuff, and you can just draw on all these colours and stuff and create a brilliant piece. These are all just tools. It's all just tools of thinking about things. So we talked about the moment, describing the moment. We talked about the moment. We talked about the feeling of the moment. So now we've used this quite abstract imagery to generate around that. And then the next thing I want to do is to talk about like actually how sometimes talking about the micro, the things that are really small in the scene. So like if you're trying to describe what happened to you at that moment, that initial moment. So let's say it was, you know, winning the lottery. There's things that invite the audience to feel like they're there. And it could be something as a half-opened box of mince pies. As soon as I say a half-opened box of mince pies, it tells us lots of information. Christmas is probably coming up. Is person eating it on their own? Have they got family around? They got friends around? If I said a half-opened box of mince pies in a student kitchen at university, then all of a sudden, whoa, a whole movie started to play in your brain. And make all those little details makes whatever we're about to say feel really real. Makes it feel like this happened and we're there and we're experiencing it with the protagonist, the authors. Cool. So I want to encourage you. I want you to think about the situation, the experience that we spoke about at the moment, and I want you to try and pick out some small details. You know what? I'm actually gonna read you from some existing authors. Is that all right? Yeah. So this is one from K. Tempest. The poem. In fact, the title of the poem does loads of work. We went to the river to swim. Angel, you bring everything near when you caress my forehead with the bridge of your nose. The droplets of water that dome on your shoulders in September sunlight. So, what I love about that, you've got this scene where we went to the river, so I told you that she's there with someone. Angel, you bring everything near, so probably with a partner or someone, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. You caress my forehead with the bridge of your nose. Reminds me of what cats do, really affectionate. So look, just that little moment, like that's a real moment of detail. Caressing your forehead with the bridge of caressing my forehead with the bridge of your nose, and then the next bit, like the droplets of water, like these tiny details to actually tell us, make things real, make this love that Kay's writing about real. I'm going to read another one from Inwa Ellams. This one is called. It's in a collection where every title has got the F word as the title. So it's F this, F that, F that. Like every poem is called F something. This one is called, except he doesn't say F, he uses the actual F word. F Border Guards. So this poem is called F Bodyguards. Heavy booted and uniformed. The armed who man the borders. I'll start that again. F Border Guards. Heavy booted and uniformed. The armed who man the borders of narrative and myth. Right, so I'll stop there. That's just the first line, and it's already gangster. Heavy booted and uniformed. Like as soon as you say that, that little detail, heavy booted, uniformed, you're in there already. And what I love about that is, Inwa's first line there, is that he takes something small and detailed, a shoe, heavy booted, and then he takes it to something cosmic and like a massive thematic, epic language. So if I said heavy booted and uniformed, he smoked a cigarette. Okay, we get the picture, but he doesn't do that. He goes heavy booted and uniformed. That's enough. That's all you're getting of detail and description and imagery. The armed who man the borders of narrative and myth. So this border guard isn't just like stood there with his gun, smoking a fag. All of a sudden Inwa takes that little detail and expands it out to be he mans the borders of narrative and myth. So it's like this is the guy that guards stories. So little detail, but a big thing that he's saying about the world and how like our nation's real, our border's real. Who gives you the right to travel here and that? Just in one line. That's really cool. And the last thing I'm going to read is something one of my students wrote. She's only 14 and lives in Yorkshire. This is called The Lupset Hotel. All I know is how to be a pub child, drifting off on the worn down chairs. Distorted people pull me up to dance, but I refuse. My mum has no thoughts in her head. White girl dancing to Gangster's Paradise. I'm offered a drink, but I decline. Right. So the details there. All I know is how to be a pub child. Okay. Drifting off on the worn down chairs. Like just tells us loads about the pub. The chairs are worn down. Distorted people. Nice bit of imagery. Like how are people distorted? It's interesting. They're drunk. Distorted people pull me up to dance, but I refuse. Mum has no thoughts in her head, and this amazing detail here that makes things, it feels really real, and you can start to visualize it. White girl dancing to Gangster's Paradise. So if you know the song by Coolio, it's quite a famous song from the 90s. It's still quite famous. You're getting those details, like the Miley Cyrus with Friends Laughing that we had, which is brilliantly drawn detail. You can picture this girl in the pub watching her mum drunkenly dancing. It's amazing. Well done, that Charlie Mathery from Wakefield, Yorkshire. So there we go, like 2 award-winning poets and my mate Charlie down the road. Well done. Those little details. So I want to give you, again, only a few minutes really to come up with 3 or 4 details from the scene that you talked about. So if it was getting told off, if it was being excited with your friends, just those little details. It could be the chocolate bar on the floor. It could be the phone that's running out of battery. It doesn't have to associate totally with what's happening. It's just a detail to make us feel that we know where we are and we can see what you were seeing at the time. Go. 2 minutes. Awesomeness. Time. Right. So in terms of like putting things in the audience's head, I think we've got a bunch there. Like hooks that can draw people into a story or into a moment. I think we've got a bunch there. What I want to do, or it's drawing you into a world. You know, you could describe trumpet-shaped flowers that smelt of a combination of peanuts and joy. A sky with 4 suns, and all of a sudden we're on a different planet. You know, red-colored sea with alien spaceships in there. You could take people to any planet you wanted. You could take people to any century that you wanted. That's what I love about poetry, is that you can time travel within 2 sentences. You can write things like, the emperor stood on the battlefield. His scabbard was empty. No arrows left in his quiver. And then Geoffrey farted in science. So we've just time traveled. We've gone from like some ancient battle and we've changed tone, and poetry can do that. You can time travel, you can tone change, it's like you can flick between TV channels. Jon Snow rides on a dragon. Donald Trump falls up the stairs to his private jet. We've just time traveled or changed channels. It's amazing. Words are so powerful. And you can still taste the apple crumble in the back of your throat. Great. So now I want to give you some, all I'm doing is throwing Lego building blocks at you, and then saying, go create something with it. Or next time you in this situation, you've got a new box of Lego to play with. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, stories are often the way in as well. I mean, everything's a story. What I'd like to do now is to give you a few sort of poetic devices, tricks, or just to sort of remind you of things really. So with spoken word, because it's live in the moment, it's a bit like an advert, in that you've only got 30 seconds to leave people with something. And what is the thing you want them to remember? Or how are you going to keep them watching or listening without going, oh, this is so boring? So there's some classic things that people do in order to keep the live listener who's sat in the room that you're in with you. Like if you've got an amazing audience, then they might just be with you. You could just read the phone book and they'll be like, yeah, man, that's beautiful. But in terms of spoken word, there's certain things that, like from slam and things like that, tends to happen. One is repetition. Which reminds me, where did I put them? Anyway, so repetition is a thing that it gets used a lot. So one of the most famous spoken word poems, which is by Gil Scott-Heron, who was a Black American writer who passed away, gosh, is it 10 years ago? Don't know. Anyways, one of the reasons that he influenced loads of rappers and stuff. He wrote a poem called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." The revolution will not be televised. And it was all about civil rights and black people in America trying to get out of poverty and trying to protest. And it was like, the poem is almost like a list of all the rubbish things in America. But he keeps repeating the refrain, "The revolution will not be televised." So if I was to remix it, I might be like, Liz Truss tries to give more money to rich people. We have the same 3 television programs being repeated every night on Saturday night on ITV, but the revolution will not be televised. Teslas are too expensive for people to buy electric cars. Kids aren't taught imagination in schools, and normally it's a rule of 3. And something else bad, and the new flavour of Coca-Cola tastes exactly the same as the old one. But the revolution will not be televised, brother. And it will just use that repetition to keep coming back, to keep making his point, and to keep you involved. And by the time he gets to the end of the poem, all he does is repeat. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be live. So that's the punchline. It's like, there's a revolution that needs to come, and we can't sit our time watching TV doing nothing, and it ends with, the revolution's got to be live. That means we've actually all got to do something positive. We've all got to have a revolution, an epiphany, an awakening of our own, and we need to go do something positive. It's not about sitting watching screens. It's about doing something. Repetition is a great way to build up rhythm, build up momentum. And also, because Gil Scott-Heron performed it over music, it's got this really funky, jazzy thing with a flute and a bass guitar and drums. It sounds so badass. It's awesome. Because there's so much going on in the music, and the music's really funky, and you want to just dance to it or sway to it or, drink your orange juice to it. He leaves lots of space in between the lines. So he doesn't say instead he's like spaces it out. There will be no pictures of policemen beating down brothers on the instant replay. There will be the space. So there's more space for you to hear the words over the music. So putting space in your delivery, or perhaps even on the page, tells us something, and it gives us it gives more power to each line, and it means that the music doesn't overwhelm the important things that we're trying to say. I totally recommend listening to The Revolution Not Be Televised. It's like, this is how to do spoken word over music. It's kind of amazing. It's like the basics, like boom, this is how to do it, and be awesome. Repetition is one of the things, and then putting space in. Rappers do the same thing as well. Like sometimes when you're rapping over music, the beat's going, it's really important to put the great rappers, they put massive pauses in, or they put pauses after something important. I just did it then, because you want time for the brain of the listener to understand what you just said. So you might have some crazy rap flow. I don't know, I was talking about K Tempest. Yeah, they say I'm blessed with K Tempest, nevertheless I keep on stressed like this. Pause. Before I come in with the next line, da 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 da. Pause. And it allows, especially if you're saying something clever or something with a really good simile in it, or something that you think's really inspirational. But now still nobody talks about George Floyd. Pause. Gives people a chance to go, oh yeah, nobody's talking about George Floyd anymore. They just want to get rid of the immigrants. What? Okay. You've just made a connection and you've done the pause. So these things like pauses is mega helpful. The other thing, like rhetorical devices, like asking questions. So big cheesy rap track, which was quite positive, by that will.i.am guy off The Voice. He did Black Eyed Peas, Where Is the Love? Where is the love? So having rhetorical devices like, what's wrong with the world, mama? That's the first line. All of a sudden it asks a question, it draws a listener in. And then the chorus is, where is the love, the love, the love, where is the love? And it's a good hook that keeps people coming back to what is this about? And it gives a sense of rhythm, and you can build up to it. But questions, really good rhetorical device. And the last thing I'm going to do is talk about some classic rap stuff, which rap teaches you. Poets, spoken word poets use it too, and normal, just whatever, page poets do it as well. But I talk about punchlines. I've mentioned it a few times today. So a punchline for me is like a zinger line. A line that gets a reaction out of an audience live. I just attempted to freestyle one there with the George Floyd thing. So, for example, I'm going to make up a punchline for you now. So, and all the classic poetic devices, metaphors, similes, alliteration, assonance, all these poetic tricks that great writers use, from Shakespeare to Miley Cyrus. Is she a great writer? She probably gets great writers to write songs for her like Rihanna does. But they all use these tricks to get a response out of the listener. And a punchline isn't a joke, it's something in rap. A punchline can be a joke, but it can also be a memorable line. And there's loads of different lines. Like my favourite rap crew called De La Soul, who are from New York. They were around when I was a kid, and they're still putting out records now. One of my favourite lines in their thing is they do some lines where they're bragging, like classic rappers do, like, yeah, we're the best, we're the da-da-da-da-da. But this is how De La Soul did it. They go, yeah, De La Soul's here to stay. Like racism. And you're like, oh. You're kind of bragging about how cool a hip-hop group you are, but you're also using the opportunity to really confront people that the fact we've still got blooming racism around, and we need to get better, and we need to change things up. So it's a line that doesn't make me laugh, because it's a punchline that doesn't make me laugh. It's a punchline that makes me go, ouch. I don't like hearing that, but it's making me think. It's triggering me in a good way. So rappers, all the great rappers are full of punchlines, I would say. And normally, the secret to a good one is rappers love similes and stuff like that. I do a whole, if you search Testament poetic devices, I do a whole rap where every line uses a poetic device. So I say, my metaphors are weapons and swords to slay dragons. So I use a metaphor to surround metaphor. Picture the scene in the darkened cavern where imagery happens. I love listening to lyrical language like alliteration. Personification told me these rhymes are amazing. So that's an example. There's a good like hooks in terms of like, yeah, you know, these are tricks to get an audience to respond in the moment. Yeah, I'm just gonna 1 second. Hello, thank you for that. Yeah, but it could be a really silly joke or a put down or so like if I was going to freestyle a punchline for you now, at the moment I'm thinking a lot about immigration, problems with the immigration system, and how racist immigration system can be, and how we demonize people who come from other countries. So I could say. People thought slavery was long gone, people being overseen, but we just offshore the slavery, now it's overseas. So overseen, something like that. I could probably if I thought about it for 5 minutes, I could probably make it all in one line and have oversee and overseen, so it's like a play on the thing. A play on the words, and the words sound similar. And you get a response out of a live audience. Or punchline could just be like, yeah, you might see me on WWE, a body slam Boris Johnson off the scene, whatever, and everyone goes, hey, because they don't like Boris Johnson too, right? And in hip hop, normally it's the fourth line. Hip hop is in 4/4, so the music it goes dum 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 dum, but 2, no 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 3, no 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 no, and the fourth line, there's the punchline. So normally they put it on the fourth line. That's a very easy way when you start rapping. Go get all your clever lines, stick them on the fourth line, the 8th line, the 12th line, the 16th line. Yeah, Cool in the Gang. Funk music to me is Cool in the Gang. So that's a pun. What is it, a pun? Who knows what it is? Cool in the Gang's the name of a funk group. So there's loads of different ways of doing that. Similes are really great. Like songwriters use that quite a lot. So they could say, "Oh yeah, I'm a Ferrari. You're a tricycle. That's broken." So that comparative thing, you know. My music is top 10. Yours is bargain bin. Okay, you know, they like to brag about things, which doesn't really mean anything. But rappers often do that. But so you can, so like one of Stormzy's tunes he released this year, he says, I'm like, I got more fire than Khaleesi, I think it's something like that. So it's referring like a character who looks after dragons, you know. So it's like, okay, off Game of Thrones. So stuff like that. I got more fire than the House of Dragon. Rah. So those kind of things. And often juxtaposition is a really big thing as well. So like we're using similes, but juxtaposing one thing to another, it can get a visceral reaction out of an audience. They can gasp. If you get it right, you can get them to gasp. You can get them to cheer. You can get them to laugh and split their sides. I just reminded of an old rapper friend of mine, and he won a rap competition with this line. I'm so funky, so we know it's a simile, right? I'm so funky, because he's using it sort of to exaggerate how funky he is. I'm so funky, when I sit on a toilet seat, even the splash from my poo makes a funky beat. And everyone was laughing for about 10 minutes. And he was just using hyperbole and kind of creating some sort of weird, just using hyperbole with it. So that's some turn of phrase. So there we go. So in terms of punchlines, that's one way to get an audience to react in the moment. And obviously I'm doing it, you could do it with a rhyme. Toilet seat makes a funky beat, right? Okay. But then you can also make an audience react live in the moment, not just with what you say, which is really the most important thing, is what you say, I would say, and the words that you've crafted, which comes from your brain and your hard work and your heart and your soul. But also, you can make an audience react just by your flow. And in rap music, your flow is about the way you use rhythm and the way you use rhyme. So in old school rap, it was very simplistic. It would sound like a nursery rhyme. What you hear is not a test, I'm rapping to the beat. Me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try to move your feet. Mary had a little lamb, his fleece was white as snow, and it's very simple, just one syllable rhyming at the end of each line, really. But then around the early 90s, late 80s, they started using lots of single syllable flows. So they'll be like, Mary hid a little lamb, yes I am, I'm in the jam. So lots of jam, am, lamb. So the rhymes were quite close together. That sounds really funky on the ear. It sounds loads of fun to listen to, and you can get the audience to start to get excited. Mary had a little lamb, I'm in the jam, and yes I am. Shout out to my babies, even those who chilling in the pram. Right. So you get reaction with the punchline, and you also get the excitement of the rhythm building up. And then the last thing, the new school rappers, people like Eminem, from Nas onwards, so like 93 onwards, they're not just rhyming one syllable, they're rhyming multiple syllables. So my name is Testament, that's 3 syllables. Testament, relevant, heavier than elephants, right? More jazz than elephants. So that's like a half rhyme. And rappers love to half rhyme because it's not about what it looks like on the page, it's about like, what does it sound like in your accent? When you say things, you might have 3 sounds at the end of each line that rhyme. Or if you're Eminem, this must mean I'm disgusting, but it's just me, I'm just obscene. Loads of rhymes. The classic thing when people study about multisyllabic rhyming or compound rhyming is looking at Eminem's Lose Yourself thing. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on his sweater already. So you have loads of words matching up with rhymes. Vomit on his sweater already, arms are heavy, keeps on forgetting, arms are heavy. So it's like, arms are heavy, mom spaghetti, on forgetting. Very complex relationships between the rhyming words, which is why they should give him all the money. Even if he speaks nonsense, he does it in a very rhythmically complex way. He's got lots of different flows as well, it's very impressive. So people like Stormzy tend to rhyme like 2 sounds at the end. Boris, Forest, whatever, honest. There we go. So those are the things. So I'm going to set you a little rhyme challenge with the last 7 minutes. Dun, dun, dun. The rhyme challenge is, I want you to look back at what you've written today. It could be one of the details. It could be something that you wrote being shouted at in math class. It could be one of the imagery that you came up with. Could be storm clouds with a bit of sun. And just, I want you to come up with a rhyming couplet with it. And so I want to see how many in the 2 lines, in 2 lines, how many rhymes can you put into a couplet? So if it was, I'm as content as Miley Cyrus. I'm content listening to Miley Cyrus, chilling with my friends. And Dumfries is my ends. Or you could be like, I'm happy chilling. I listen to Miley Cyrus, chilling with my friends, contented in the end, dizzy like the bends. You could have 3 rhymes in it. How many rhymes can you put into 2 lines? And it's up to you. You can rhyme the same sound over and over again, or you could be really ambitious. So Miley Cyrus laughing with my friends could be like Miley Cyrus laughing with my friends. But I'm tired. I'm a target in these ends. But I'm tired. I'm a target in the ends while I'm chilling listening to Miley Cyrus with my friends. So you can have multiple rhyming syllables within it. Could be internal rhymes, could be like whole rhymes, one line completely lining up with the line underneath. So that's your challenge. I will give you 3.5 minutes to write as many rhymes as you can. The secret is, this is the trick. This is the trick. Think of the word you want to rhyme and write a list of rhyming words, and then you can choose which one goes in where. If you don't do that, it's a lot harder. But so think of the thing you want to say, think of 5 things that rhyme with it, and then start peppering them into the 2 lines. I'll give you 3.5 minutes, go! That was a very hard task. Extremely. But it's something that takes, like in terms of like writing compound rhymes in particular, and playing with rhyme, it's something you have to keep doing. It's very much like writing a sonnet. You know, sonnets have got certain rules. They've got certain, amount of syllables and stresses and unstresses, and it has to be 14 lines long. And if you're not used to doing it, your first sonnet can give you a massive headache. But by the time you get on your 10th one, it's pretty good. And actually can be really like exciting. Or like writing the first ever haiku. It could be like, oh man, this is really tough. But on your 20th one, it's like, it's all right. And on your 100th one, you're like, I dream in haiku. Like if you've ever played computer games loads, and then you go to bed and you dream about playing the computer game, and then you wake up and you're thinking about computer game. So often when I'm writing poems, I'll be wake up. I'll be waking up in the middle of the night going, oh, I've got a line. I'll write it down because your brain is just getting into that zone. Cool. Has anybody? I'll give you one really quick example, and then I'll open up for kind of questions, and then we'll probably disappear. So, example. Is Testament rolling up on the beat? All the fun of the fair. That's how I'm setting the scene. Time's wasted. I've got better places to be. I see enough oddities on the street on this odyssey. So enough oddities on the street on this odyssey. So the rhyme thing itself is like, it's got an energy to it and can get a reaction if I perform it right. Just with the rhyme. Even though I'm not saying anything particularly spiky or thingy. I see enough oddities on the street on the odyssey. There's a little joy just in hearing those words smushed together. 3 syllables, 3 syllables, 3 syllables. Oddity, honestly, oddity. Great. Cool. So if you want to be rappers, that's a good place to start. Look at your favourite rappers and study them. Has anyone got any questions? While anyone's typing, if you do want a challenge for further pushing on, try and use all the different things that we've used today. So rhyme like this, repetition, those small details, to tell the story of that moment in a single poem. Try and use all the different things. I was shouted at maths in maths. All I could do was look at my Iron Man pencil case detail. Or all I could do was look at my Iron Man pencil case. I was shouted at maths, but I was up to the task. She said, wind your neck in. I said, I'm a giraffe. So, you've got metaphors, punchlines, rhyme, all within something like that. So that's your challenge, is to use all those Lego building, all the different sets of Lego to try and build something. And hopefully within it, you'll have something entertaining. You'll have something that keeps the interest, keeps people locked in, and that builds in rhythm to a climax, to a punchline. All right, that's it from me.